All right, Councilman Baun, item H.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to just go over this basically more for like the public to identify what has been identified as part of the budget, including the $500,000 as well as 2 deputies and the Tahoe component. However, I believe also we have to push this back a little bit in order to do some additional discussions with the Sheriff's Office. Or I guess we don't?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
Unless there's something in there you don't like.
No, that's why I kind of wanted to go over that and just make sure the public actually was aware of what was in the agreement that we have with the Sheriff's Office right now, including those 3 components. It was, I guess, out there that none of this was going to happen. And I think we continuously have said from day one that we'd been working on this. I think some of the stuff that's been out in the public, we'll call it the political stuff, is kind of had an adverse impact of this. Again, we as council direct you to work with the Sheriff's Office. Some of the things from a political perspective, I think, got in the way of that and kind of, we'll call it sideswiped it. And I just want to make sure that everybody knows actually what the city council directed me to do and what happened with it.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Pike.
Thank you. I do have comments on 7H as well. And I am so happy for the opportunity of us to work towards the increase in police staffing. But if you recall, on October 1st, 2021, we brought a budget on board with 2 special enforcement team members, which is called the Sept members, to patrol the Greenbelt in our city parks, which was great, but we still are far away from the deficiency totals of our staffing levels of 25, about doubling the size of the city, also doubling the size of the city to in our square mileage. The $503,000 that we did allocate for had to come out of emergency reserves. I am curious to where the additional roughly $300,000 are going to come from for the additional staffing for the new deputies. And there's been no discussion, to my knowledge, of any conversations for these additional deputies to come on board yet. And there's a huge time deficiency on the time that we actually do bring these people on and at the time they can actually get out on patrol. So as I do implore and I'm excited about all the monies that we found for the status quo to maintain the level of service from last budget. I am a little concerned of where we're coming up with the additional funding for these new deputies coming on. And I'd like to remind the council that both Star and CUNA are also contracting the cities, and they've taken the positive, proactive approach to bring their levels up to the service that we've been talking about and requesting for the last 4 years that we've all been on council. So I'm excited about the opportunity to see progress moving forward, but I'm also concerned with where the additional monies, since we already went into the emergency reserves to fund the $503,000, where those additional funds are going to also come from. And I would encourage us to make sure that we stick to the topic and not get into any political advertisements for any candidate.
Okay. Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor, I guess the only comment I would make is I think there was significant discussion. I think we spent a better part of about 45 minutes to an hour discussing this relative to the Avamore application. This was already identified. We talked about it the entire time. I believe we had a conversation about the discrepancy in funding that the Avamore annexation would cover between those two. So I think we had significant conversations about specifically adding 2 officers in there. So I don't know where. I guess I don't know where Councilman Pike identifies that we haven't talked about this.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry we're getting into debate right now, but that's not the question at hand. The question at hand is where are we getting these $300,000 for the additional deputies that supposedly are coming on without any knowledge from the sheriff or the police chief in any conversations. And I am a little concerned with the time lapse of once we annexed in, where's the $300,000 coming from? Are you making the assumption that all the taxes that are already coming from those houses are going to be put onto the increase of staffing for the Eagle Police contract? So I'm not real sure where the monies are coming from again, which I just asked for a few seconds ago. because we've already allocated out of our emergency reserves for the deficiency to maintain status quo. So where are these $300,000 coming from to offset that deficiency? So I'll maintain
I
my
will say
question.
that was your question at hand, but if he gets to make his own comments, he doesn't have to answer your question at this point.
Well,
So-
I'd like to have a question answered.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a decision that the council, that's one of the decisions the council gets to make. We have a capital plan presentation tonight and a few other things that we need to decide, where do we pull money from to be able to make sure we cover this. We do have $128,000 that Avamore decided through the annexation process to give us towards that, so we don't have to come up with the full $300,000. So we need to look at where our priorities are and move some around to be able to get these extra officers added.
But I still maintain that we're in a deficiency right now, though.
Okay. Great. Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Gittelsberger?
I just wanted to say that I did agree with Councilman Baun that unfortunately this was made public, and also there were follow-up replies from Mr. Mayor as well, too, that was not made public to support the initial outing of the chief's email to council. Unfortunately, I do think that it did hinder the ability for you to maintain a proper contract ability to present to us as a council, and I don't think it offered the best negotiations for the residents of Eagle. So unfortunately that occurred, but I do greatly appreciate the ability to have this presented contract include the additional officers. So with that, I extend my support on this consent agenda item.
Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, I agree with Councilwoman Gittelsberger's comments as well as Councilman Baun's. One thing I did want to note was that during our budget meetings this year, Councilmember Pike did not offer any comments requesting additional officers at our tentative budget hearing meeting on July 8th. And that's the budget hearing where we set the numbers for publication. I would have been happy to entertain a plan for adding additional officers. He has stated we are deficient by 10, and I'd like to know how we can fund 10 additional officers, which is what he would like. There's never been a plan presented by him. I've heard comments about initially, well, we'll just move general funds around, and then there was a comment about, well, we'll just use mitigation fees. And then the last proposal I hear is let's use the liquor sales tax. So I think all of us up here want a safe community. We live here. We have adult children, grandchildren, and Eagle would be nothing if it were an unsafe community. So that's always our number one priority. And we just need to keep that our focus, and I'm happy to support the continuing cooperation between the Sheriff's Office and Mayor Pierce.
So I'll just say that, just so the public understands the process, is that the council approves a budget. And within that budget numbers, obviously money can be moved around and things can be done within a budget. After the budget is approved, then there is contract negotiations with all kinds of different entities. That is my job, with the direction of the council, to give those negotiations. Unfortunately, when you have people that get in the middle of the contract negotiations, it kind of takes away from you being able to negotiate for the best for the community. We have always done what the sheriffs have asked us to do. When I first became mayor, I met with Chief Clifford at the time. He said, we don't need to add any officers right now. We're doing good. Our numbers look good. We'll be okay. But I think next year we'll have to do something. And then the next year, we talked again, and he said, we'd really need a couple officers for the Greenbelt. Our officers, when they go to protect the Greenbelt and the parks, they have to get on their bikes. They ride out 10, 15 minutes. It takes them 10, 15 minutes on a call to come back. And so we really need officers that specifically do that. And we added it. This year again, we went through the process of talking with Avamore, the sheriff, everybody, if they did get annexed, of what they would need. And the sheriff at the time said, we really could use 2 more officers. That is what would make it better if we add Avamore. And so that's what we did. We went through this process, and during the negotiation of the contract, what I was really fighting for was more police protection. I believe we need even more, and we need to get it from some of our county taxes that we pay. We are not getting what we should be, in my opinion, from the Sheriff's Department. And I think that's a process, something that can't happen overnight. But, some of the things we've seen over this contract negotiations that have been really good is we've seen the number of calls our officers, our proactive calls, have gone up tremendously. we've seen more presence of the actual sheriff officers doing some of the things that they're supposed to be doing on the highways and other. We get a blotter every morning that tells us where they are. You can see those numbers going up. And it's worked out really good. And I just hope moving forward, we can work with the county commissioners and the sheriff to continue to make sure that we're all doing our part to make sure that the community as a whole is safe. I will tell you right now, Eagle cannot do it all on its own. It has to come from a county support system. It just does. For those people that have moved here from other places, you know, the last bastion that you loved and lived in and you ended up leaving to come here, it's because everything else fell around it until it got to your community, and then your community fell. So that's why we need to have a bigger global perspective on this, and that's what I'm going to be pushing for, and that's what I hope for, and I think we can do that as a whole moving forward.
Will you allow me to rebut anything?
Sure.
All right. Well, I do appreciate the comments that you guys are making, and I do appreciate the support. But how in the world can you ask for additional officers when you've already put $503,000 out of your budget into that increase for status quo? So of course I wasn't going to ask for any additional deputies this contract, because we've already spent $500,000 on just keeping status quo. So putting a plan together, as Councilwoman Russell has alluded to, I do have a three-phase plan, and it's in part of my issues that I'm working through right now, and I won't get into any campaigning because I just said we shouldn't do that, yet these things are still coming my way. So I do feel strongly that you don't ask for additional officers when you've just depleted your emergency reserves of $503,000. You wait. And I have not seen any negotiations with the sheriff so far, or the police chief for that matter, in any collaborative effort to add additional deputies to the system, because it takes such a long process, anywhere from 15 to 2 years, 15 months to 2 years, to even get one on board. So, and we can't rob Peter to pay Paul. You can't have the sheriff's office deplete their server resources to get us up to our contract levels that we're asking for. So I just remind the council and the mayor that we did put $503,000 into the status quo, and that's the reason that I did not ask for any additional officers. But if you go back to all three budget hearings that we've been a part of, I've adamantly asked for, let's be proactive. Let's be making sure we're not getting behind the 8 ball. It's all on video. You guys can go back and look at it. I'm not going to give you the times. I do have the times, but I want you to do your own homework on this. But I'm very disappointed that the fact that any letter was brought out for anything going on with negotiations whatsoever. And I'm certainly disappointed to see that a collaborative violation of open meeting law for 3 council members to write a letter in response to me. It's very unprofessional, and it also has the Attorney General's notification needed to see where that goes.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just go back to, we have been working with the Sheriff's Department all the time on what kind of officers they want. We talk with the sheriff, we talk with our chief, we do all that. It was disappointing to see a letter come out that talked about the fact that where are we 18 days and counting. So once again, so everybody knows, the last meeting in September is almost always the time that we approve these things. In the last 13 years, we have only signed the contract before October 1st 3 times. Every other time it has been after October 1st, and sometimes as long as November 1st. So this is nothing out of the ordinary. And I don't know if our attorney wants to make any comments at all about open meeting laws or what happened with that at this time, or not.
Mayor and council, the topic has come up several times, so let me just at least go over a little bit under Idaho's open meetings laws. Mayor, as you're aware, there have been at least phone calls to city staff asking about this, and certainly my office has looked at it. And, we've determined that there was not an open meeting violation, nor even an open meeting, a decision as defined under Idaho Code 74202 means any determination, action, vote, or final disposition upon a motion, proposal, resolution, order, ordinance, or measure on which a vote of a governing body is required. Upon my review of the information that I was provided, this was not an official act or a motion or anything taken by the city council or an official act of the city, which is why I've come out with a determination that there was no open meetings violation, because there was no open meetings. And I'd be happy to answer follow-up questions with what I just said.
Mr. Mayor, I do have a follow-up question then.
Councilman Pike?
And I'm sorry that this has to be brought up this way, but I totally don't agree with that based on Idaho has an open meeting law. It's Idaho Code 74-201 through 74-208 that prohibits city council members from meeting with one another to discuss city business without the public's ability to attend the meeting. Their statement demonstrated that they met together and drafted a statement about city business, the Eagle Police contract, without doing so openly. There is no exception to the Idaho Open Public Meeting Law to allow them to have such a secret meeting. And I'll also bring into account, Mr. Attorney, that also that they put their council members' names on top, and then they all signed this letter below. So I have an issue with how that's not three of them doing series meeting together, because they all signed a letter accordingly. And the Attorney General's Idaho Open Meeting Law manual specifically states the term meeting extends to informal sessions or conferences of board members designed for the discussion of public business. As the Eagle Police contract is subject to the vote of these very same council members who wrote the statement, it is apparent that they discussed the contract together without doing so in an open meeting. They admit in their letter that the contract is still in negotiations and they are waiting for the results for their presumed approval. The statement provides further proof that the willingness of these council members to meet secretly to formulate their plan and to pursue their own agenda without the transparency required by Idaho law. The state, I apologize, this thing's not cooperating well, but come on. This is important though, so I want to make sure we get this right. The statement of the city council members concluded with caution about misinformation on social media, yet they have provided a view that is misleading and framed in a way to support their political agenda. The email from Chief Wilkie is an expression of his deep and professional experience in law enforcement. Read it carefully. It is very telling about Mayor Pierce and his false statements in the public about policing in Eagle. And Mr. Mayor, that's the only reason I'm running against you.
Okay. Yeah.
Mayor, I have nothing else to add. I mean, certainly Mr. Pike and I can agree to disagree at this point.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, well, I think one of the things that was really tough during all this was the fact that here I am, the mayor, supposed to be negotiating on behalf of the council to bring back something that you guys will approve or not approve, and was really hindered. Like I said, the chief's email was very disturbing in the fact that this has come down 18 days and counting is the title of it. The fact that, you know, we haven't approved them before 18 days in so many other instances in the years past. And so to all of a sudden put this out for the public to see was just something that I didn't think was appropriate during contract negotiations. You know, those things are supposed to be done.
May I ask one more interjection with you then?
What's that?
May I ask one more question for you
Sure.
then? All right. How are you going to respond to the chairman of the county commissioners that wrote you a letter advocating for the same information that the sheriff and myself have been trying to explain to you the whole time?
Well, because I'll be honest with you, he doesn't understand it either. That was written and came from the same information as the sheriff was doing. And it's kind of sad that we're not seeing the sheriff and the commissioners follow state law. And I think there's a big misconception that you'll hear a lot out there. There's this discussion of, you know, unincorporated policing and city policing. Mm-hmm. That's really sad because we really have a rural and an urban policing is what we should be talking about. And the fact is that the county commissioners keep approving projects like Hidden Springs, like Dry Creek Ranch, all these things that people are expecting to be cities. And we need to be able to have the policing throughout the county to take care of those things and also do their jobs that they're obligated to do through Title 31 and other things. So I think one of the big things people need to understand is you don't have to have a police department in Eagle, in any city in Idaho. It is supposed to be handled by the elected sheriff. But we want one because we want better services and we want more for our community. But we also need to not be neglected on the other half. Just because you own some of the most expensive homes in the valley, just because you make some of the most money in the state, doesn't mean you should be paying more taxes just because of it. I really think that both the county and the city need to be very good stewards and know their position and what they're supposed to do within the state and spend the money wisely.
My last question to you then, Mr. Mayor. Are you going to go on record saying that the citizens of Eagle are being double taxed?
Oh, I will definitely. I've said that
Okay.
a bunch of times.
All right, thank you.
You pay county taxes that are supposed to do those state obligations, and then you pay city taxes. And we are supplementing some of the stuff that you're supposed to be taking care of through your county taxes. And I think that's a shame. I don't think we should be doing that. I think it happens all over the county. I don't think it's just an Eagle. But because of the fact that you guys pay 40 to 60% more county taxes than the next closest city, and you're not receiving those support services, I think is a shame, and we should be fighting for those things for you guys. So I will continue to fight for that so that you don't have to keep getting taxed more and more from your city on top of it.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I got to have one more comment
question,
then,
okay.
because I don't agree with that one
That's
at all.
great.
Which is fine. I mean, I want us to have a debate, but here's the deal: when you pay county taxes, you pay for the jails, you pay for the deputies that are in the courts, you pay for quite a few other amenities, and also mutual aid, special enforcement that comes in from the county to provide additional services when we have large calls, all on them. We're not being double taxed whatsoever. So I don't agree with that statement at all. And I appreciate you as the mayor right now. I respect you as Jason Pierce, but I definitely have a difference of opinion for this law enforcement issue. And at no time have I ever been told that there was negotiations going on with the sheriff from the mayor.
That's what contract negotiations are. It's kind of interesting that why you would not think that we're going through negotiations. That's how the system's worked for 4 years that you've been here.
We go
It's
through
the same
negotiations.
thing. Who does?
Us.
No, you don't at all. You don't even understand how the system works.
No, you have to bring it
You've been
back
here
to us.
4 years, Brad. This is, okay, well, I'm going to ask, is there anyone who'd like to make a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Baun.
I'd like to make a motion to approve action or consent item 7H, joint powers agreement between the City of Eagle and Ada County Sheriff's Office relating to law enforcement services for fiscal year 23-24 in the amount of $4,536,646.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and second. Any more discussion? All those in, actually roll call.
Gindelsberger?
Aye.
Pike?
All right.
Baun?
Aye.
Russell? Motion carries.
All right, we will move on